It's official. The Colts have hired Lou Anarumo as their new defensive coordinator. And today we are joined by a very special guest who has covered Anarumo's time with the Bengals from start to finish. He's going to tell us the truth about the Colts' new defensive coordinator. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Arthur from horseshoehuddle.com. I'm your resident credentialed media member for the site. And today we are talking more Lou Anarumo. Of course, Zach and I got to you guys pretty much right after the news was announced yesterday. We're going to keep this train rolling because it's a very important hire that the Colts have made. Gus Bradley had some strengths and some weaknesses, but ultimately his groups were not good enough. And the Colts have things to improve across the board, but a strong defensive coordinator hire will certainly help. There's some new players they need to get in there for Anarumo as well. And so today I spoke with Ben Baby, the ESPN Bengals writer. He has covered Anarumo's time with the Bengals from start to finish, again, 2019 to now. And Ben gives us a lot of really good context into what is good about Anarumo, what went wrong, and really where the truth lies and what Colts fans might expect from their new defensive coordinator. You know, Zach and I are both optimistic about this hire. We think it's should go well as long as Anarumo is given, the tools to succeed, which, for all of Gus Bradley's faults, he wasn't always given the right players either. But we don't want to sugarcoat it and make it seem like it's a home run, like 1,000% going to be a success. Like there is a reason things went the way they did in Cincinnati and why ultimately they felt they needed to move on. Now, I will say, first and foremost, Anarumo is very well respected by opposing players and coaches around the league. We've seen, Shane Steichen leading up to this announcement has spoken highly of Anarumo before. Even in the preseason, the Bengals threw the Colts some things they didn't expect to see there. But Travis Kelce from the Chiefs said he was pretty much floored. Used some colorful language to express how surprised he was that the Bengals rather moved on from Anarumo. So this is a guy where statistically it doesn't always look great, and I'll start with that. So right off the bat with Anarumo's time with the Bengals, the defense finished 25th in yards and 29th in points. The next year, 22nd in yards and 26th in points as he started to lay the groundwork, get more of the players he wanted. You could see a little improvement in the first couple years. And then it's when they really took off. 2021 is when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. And if you remember, that offense got really, really clunky late. They could not protect Joe Burrow to save their lives. And the defense really had to kind of help drag the entire Bengals team to the Super Bowl. They were 17th in yards that year and 18th in points. It got even better the next year, 6th in yards and 16th in points. So things started to go really, really well. There were some really good players there. Jesse Bates, DJ Reader, Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, Eli Apple was playing really good football. And then things started to fall off. You saw the Bengals electing to or just being unable to financially afford some of those guys anymore. And a lot of Anarumo's most important players on that side of the ball left in free agency. They also had some guys in the draft that hadn't panned out or just didn't develop quickly enough, which, part of that could be attributed to coaching as well. But overall, I think Anarumo is the type of coach who is going to kind of fill the gaps that Colts fans wanted Bradley to do. They wanted Bradley to be more aggressive when it came to blitzing, be able to make better adjustments and game plan for specific opponents, and just basically make it seem like there was a plan on the defensive side of the ball. And, Anarumo from his players was nicknamed the mad scientist. So they know that guy's always got a plan. So This is an interesting hire nonetheless. But I'll quit, bugging your guys' ears off, and we'll get to this conversation that we had again with ESPN's Ben Baby. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. I've actually been to pretty much all of that in the last year. You can add a couple of live podcast tapings on stage to that as well. And Gametime has been a huge reason why. Now, Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals and great seats so that you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was actually looking for tickets to an upcoming event, something up there at the new Fishers Event Center coming up in the spring. And I was using the Gametime app, and with Gametime Picks, I found amazing deals, and I was even able to see my view from the seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering detailed seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in prices showed the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout, because no one loves seeing all the millions of added expenditures that come in when you actually see the itemized results. That is never fun, and it almost takes the fun out of going when you have to shell out 50, 60 extra bucks on random stuff. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, everyone. We have got ESPN Bengals reporter Ben Baby with us to give some context to this Lou Anarumo hiring. Some people think it's a really good hire, an experienced guy who's respected around the league. Some see, the statistics from last year with the Bengals and not making the playoffs. And we got someone here who can kind of explain everything for us. So Ben has seen Anarumo's entire tenure in Cincinnati, so this is just the guy to talk to. So Ben, first off, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting hire for Indianapolis. I think, the quality, it shows the quality of Anarumo that he immediately found a job as a defensive coordinator, did not have to go back and find an assistant job, go back to being a DB's coach. It's interesting when the Bengals hired him in 2019, and that was my first season, but the staff was already put together when I took over on the beat. The Bengals had a hard time getting a defensive coordinator in the building on Zach Taylor's first staff, and Lou did not have any real significant coordinator experience. I believe he was an interim at one point in time, but there was a lot of questions about how he would do. And I thought he grew into the job pretty well. But after 6 years, the Bengals decided to go ahead and make a change.
Yeah, so just from the outside view of it, summarizing, it kind of looked like it took a couple years to build things up how he wanted, then got really hot. That defense really helped the team get to the Super Bowl. And then things kind of petered out. It looked like there were some really important free agent departures. So how would you kind of summarize, I guess the rise and fall of Anarumo there in Cincinnati?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about, the arc. And it did take him a couple of years. That you definitely got the sense of that from guys who played on that defense. He kind of had to feel his way out. And I think that as time went on, he definitely got an understanding and a feeling of how to be a coordinator, how to lead an entire group. And it was interesting, towards the end of this season, I think a lot of people understood that, Anarumo might be the one who ends up having to take the heat for the Bengals missing the playoffs, given how good they looked. But guys on the defensive side of the ball really enjoyed playing for him. Von Bell, came back to play for Anarumo as a free agent, was a starter. And I think that there were probably, when you go back and look at it, that's probably one of the decisions that will cost Lou a little bit here, and that maybe the inability to maybe trust some of his younger players early on this season, guys like Jordan Battle, who looked like he was good as a rookie in 23, but because of kind of the communication issues they had, was hoping that Von would help solidify that. Unfortunately, Von wasn't the same player that he was this first time in Cincinnati. And so you saw that change and develop. But, you talk about those free agency departures. Losing Jesse Bates was huge. Losing Von was huge the first time. DJ Reader, not bringing him back, was massive. And then, the development of the younger players, who you want to put the blame on for that. I think that there could be a lot of finger pointing there. But I think if you're a Colts fan, one of the things that you probably like is that in the last 5 games of the season, the Bengals really did figure things out. That defense was playing really well. And had they gotten in I think that you would have seen a much different unit than you did earlier on in the season. So I think that Indianapolis is getting a quality coordinator who's seen a few things and is very experienced in kind of what he wants his unit to do and what he wants it to look like.
And this is a guy, I think I heard the nickname the mad scientist, given to him for his players. And statistically over the course of the season, it doesn't always look great. Like even throughout his entire tenure, there was a couple good statistical years there. But I feel like, in big games, big moments, the defenses were always ready. So, and honestly, like free agent additions, you mentioned the younger guys maybe don't always get up to speed super quick, but I feel like they're free agent guys. A lot of them really hit, even the mid-level ones. So when it comes to Anarumo's strengths, what would you say Colts fans should probably expect it to see when it's at its best?
Yeah, I think that he, like you said, in big games, he's very game plan specific and matchup specific. And I think that's one of the things that, he's talked about a ton and the players kind of enjoyed is that they would go out and really their identity was based on who they were playing that week. There are certain things that Lou will do, but he's very flexible in what he wants. He's not going to say, I'm only going to play quarters. I'm only going to play cover 3. We'll figure out what we need to end up doing for this specific opponent. And, we saw it during that Bengals Super Bowl run, they would, he had stuff in the bag that he didn't unleash until it was time. I think the most notable one was a zero blitz he dialed up in the 2021 season AFC Championship game, which he hadn't shown all year and really only used it when he had to get Patrick Mahomes off the field. Even going back this year, Mahomes had one of his worst games ever in week 2 against the Bengals. Had the Bengals not, committed DPI on 4th and 16 or whatever it was, the Bengals probably end up winning that game. Mahomes' numbers were really bad. I think you probably could quibble with the type of zone they played in that specific scheme. But, when you look at it, those numbers were really good. And towards the back half of the year, again, I think one of the key changes was the Lou finally switched probably schematically what they wanted the defense to do, went from zone to more of a man concepts, simplify things for a lot of the younger players. That seemed to benefit. He probably, had they got that done earlier, might still be in Cincinnati. If we're being honest, that might have been the difference between them making and missing the playoffs. So that's definitely something that in hindsight probably should have happened earlier on in the season. But that schematic flexibility, I think Eli Apple was the one to call him the mad scientist, just going out and really finding a lot of exotic looks and understanding that quarterbacks are too good now. You cannot give them the same thing over and over. They're going to diagnose it really quickly. So trying to keep a team off its toes while also making sure your guys are confident in the scheme, that's definitely something that he prioritizes.
And I mean, no one's perfect when it comes to calling the defense. So what were the things that, maybe common fan gripes of Anarumo or things, you mentioned he eventually did adjust some things, but what are kind of, when you look at it, like he probably should adjust this or that, like what are fans going to have to live with?
Yeah, I think sometimes, you'll see that where, it looked like early in the year, they probably played a little too much zone and then ended up shifting to man, which would have been better. It's a pretty complex, because there's a lot going on. I think that there is some complexity issues there. So maybe some of the younger players did not grasp it quick enough. And when they simplified it, talking to a lot of guys on that side of the ball, they were playing a lot faster by the end of the year, playing with a lot of confidence. And there is a good rapport that the players are able to have, so the veterans with Lou, in saying, hey, maybe we should go out and do it this way. And he has been receptive to that over the years, especially if he trusts those guys. And I think that's something you've got to earn. So I think that's maybe something that you might have to live with is Lou maybe will want to play a certain way to a degree. And it may take a little while to change, which is what we saw in 25. I think one of the things that probably doesn't get discussed a ton, but should, is end of game situations, end of half situations, especially early in his tenure. That's something that the Bengals defense really struggled with. This season, we saw that as well, in certain situations that the Bengals just did not do. They weren't good enough in key spots defensively down the stretch. Sometimes they got bailed out by guys not being able to execute on the other side of the ball. But sometimes that's something you're going to have to deal with. Those margins are going to be pretty thin. And so, getting off the field late in games, late in halves, I think that's something that you have to watch in Indianapolis. Can Lou continue to get better in that regard? And then, I think that you're going to have to see sometimes these mobile quarterbacks are going to give his scheme fits. We've seen that in the past because he does prioritize wanting to make sure that guys can't just run all over you. That's something that I think that's a fundamental tenet. I think he would say that as well, is that you've got to be able to stop the run and force teams to throw the ball a little bit.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy who we talked about this recently on our show. If this was truly Shane Steichen kind of driving the hire, then he might want to get someone who's kind of giving him fits. And Anarumo has definitely done, especially like a couple of years ago in Cincinnati. That was an ugly, even this preseason, like it was just kind of out coached there. But we've seen some really good players there for that Cincy defense. You know, Bates, Hendrickson, Logan Wilson, or Jermaine Pratt have had some really big moments. Mike Hilton. The Colts need to change some things up on defense, obviously. So it would be wise to give your new coordinator some guys to work with who we really prefer. So are there one or two like positions where if you give them the best talent possible, it's really going to take this defense to the next level?
I think having a really rangy free safety is really big. I think that's one of the things that people didn't estimate properly, even inside the building, about letting Jesse Bates walk, is that the schematic flexibility, because Lou could play so much single high, it gave him a lot of tinkering ability with the 10 players underneath that free safety that's sitting up top. And Jesse had so much range, had great ball skills, had a lot of trust, had been in the scheme for a long time. And I think that's why you saw a lot of the kind of adaptations on that side of the ball, especially during those playoff runs, those last two, in 21 and 22. Maybe a guy like Jermaine Pratt, as someone who didn't play all that well in Cincy, he kind of had up and down moments last season. If the Bengals end up cutting him, I think that would be a no-brainer for him to go to Indianapolis, a guy who understands what Lou wants, what Lou's looking for. Was voted a captain last year, has been productive. And Lou is definitely going to tell you, and so expect to hear this, he does not care about yards. He cares about points. He will give up all the yards on the planet, but ultimately, red zone efficiency, third down efficiency, that's what he is going to prioritize. And that you want to, he'll give up all the yards on the planet, but if you can create turnovers and get stops, force teams to create, kick field goals, that's what he's going to value more than anything. And it's definitely, the numbers over the years would suggest it's not been an elite defense because when you look at the raw yards given up, points per drive, things of that nature. But in those moments when you need to get a stop, I think that's what Lou has done a good job of understanding when it's time to really unleash your best stuff and what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to let teams have. I think that he had a good balance of that last year. Bengals 30th in red zone efficiency, which was one of the key reasons why that unit wasn't good enough.
Yeah, that effective bend but don't break style is kind of what Gus Bradley really aspired to. It didn't quite work out. Before I let you go here, are there any like position coaches you think might be in line to join Anarumo?
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll see how this Bengals staff shakes out, and then we'll see who ends up being kept here. I know that Jordan Kovacs and Chuck Burks were the two holdovers from the Bengals staff, and it looks like they'll have a coordinator in here pretty shortly. So we'll see what Anarumo does. He's a guy who is a DB's coach by trade, is heavily involved in that. I think he's done a good job as well of, delegating certain aspects of the ball, rush packages, things of that nature to different staff members over the years. And, I think that you've seen him have a good command of an entire defense, which was something that was a question when he came here. So, if the Colts have the players, I think that's going to be the key component. I think, in talking to guys around the league going into last season, that was a big question mark. Did they bring enough external free agents in to really help that defense? And, someone criticized, I don't really understand why they brought back so many internal free agents when the team was so bad the previous year in 23, and they just ran it back in 24, expecting different results. And that didn't happen. So, I think Gus Bradley and Lou Anarumo can probably sympathize in a lot of ways in maybe the hands they were dealt. So I think it's going to be important to put Lou in a position to succeed. He's going to have some pieces that can allow him that flexibility that has enabled him to be successful over the years in Cincinnati.
Yeah, so far they're saying all the right things about adding the external free agents and not letting guys get complacent. So like you said, we will see. But Ben, thanks so much for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Jake, thanks for having me.
It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action, and that's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football and you want a chance to win real money while watching games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on player statistics like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns. And for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money, you can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or you want to cash out quickly, PrizePicks has got you covered. And with over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's quite clear that people are loving this platform. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's PrizePicks. Run your game. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. All right. Thanks again to Ben for his time. I thought we got a lot of really good context there and a really good explanation of who Anarumo as a coach, what you can expect from some of those players, some important positions to look out for as well. So I hope you guys got as much from that conversation as I did as well. And so thank you guys again for making Locked On Colts your first listen today. Now go find Locked On NFL. Got 2 shows a day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland is going to kick off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. And then you stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider, chat with us directly and get the inside scoop, then follow the link in our show notes. We would love to chat with you guys offline here. And if you don't already, of course, follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. We're also on TikTok and Instagram as well. Also, please be sure to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. We would love your ratings and reviews as well. That definitely helps get more eyes and ears on the show. And with that, we will see you guys tomorrow.